In one of the videos I made recently, there was a comment made by To Be Serious to the effect that it would be great if we could, let me just think if I can remember what she said. It's something to do with how good it would be if we could feel pleasures and pains, not individually, but as a kind of reflection of a collective experience, so perhaps reflective of a wider, maybe even an ecological experience. And that really got me thinking about, well, a number of things really, some of which I've spoken about before. But the first thing it got me thinking about, or what it reminded me of actually, was something that Theodor Roszak, I think that's the right pronunciation, writes about when he's talking about ecopsychology. There's a book called Ecopsychology, which he's got an essay in, and some of the essays in that book are good and some of them are not so good. But one of the things he said in his essay is something to the same effect that To Be Serious said, that that we will only make, well, kind of politicises that comment, that we will only take seriously the impact we have on the planet, the ecological impact we have, when we feel it is personal. When damage to the planet is experienced as individual pain, if you like. And I have some sympathy with that view, I think. I think at the moment, though, if there is a correlation between damage to the ecology of the planet and individual feeling and sense, for the most part it's an inverse relationship. Certainly a lot of the creature comforts that I have, including the camera that I'm making this video on, the time that I'm spending here, which is doing these videos, which is something of a luxury, the quite nice, well-controlled environment that I'm walking through, the education that I've been fortunate enough to have, all these things, in a sense, I think, are bought at the expense of damage to the environment and damage to the ecology of the planet. The electricity that's fueled all of those activities, all of the technologies and the techniques and the cultural systems and the institutional systems which provided me with leisure time have all been bought on the back of damage to the planet in some way or other, it seems to me. At least, not exclusively, but at least partially. So the things that are giving me pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment are the things that's causing the planet pain, if I can anthropomorphise for a moment, which obviously is a big problem. And conversely, the things that I would regard as suffering now, a depriving of my liberty, a consuming of my time, a restriction of my access to resources, perhaps to the point of actual starvation, all those kinds of things would probably be beneficial to the planet. And again, I'm kind of reminded of that book that came out last year, the year before. I think it's called The World Without Us, or something like that. It's just what the world would look like if humans just suddenly disappeared from it. And it's a fantastic, fantastically lush, rich environment that's created in the absence of humans. So I would experience the pleasures of the planet as pains to my individual self. So I think there is a big problem there, really. And in fact, the kind of, if we were to conceive of a kind of way of being in which, well, I think what we'd have to do is, if we were going to take ecopsychology seriously, we would have to accept the fact that it would bring about what at the moment we think of as pain and suffering for individual autonomous human beings. Individual people would suffer and die. Children would die young. Old people would die. Anybody who got sick would die. There would be lots of death as the result of various forms of slaughter. There would be lots of disease, death. All those kinds of things would need to happen if the ecology was going to be, if we'd have a functioning eco-psychology, like a functioning psychology of the ecological systems. So it would look a bit like what I was talking about before, which is that film I Am Legend, I think. And I was talking about that film, which is a terrible film with Will Smith, a remake of a couple of earlier films actually, which I did get time to see, which is great. you know, the characters, there's one character, one autonomous individual human in that film really, and that's Will Smith, who survives the apocalypse, this catastrophe, this disease which ravages the planet. Go on, Pups in the Woods. And the only other creatures around, pretty much, apart from him and his dog, are kind of zombie vampire things, who don't really have individual identities in the way that Will Smith does. He's not a rugged individualist. He's not that kind of a character at all. I mean, the zombies aren't. They're ravaging monsters. They kill. They die pretty readily. They seem to have some sort of suffering, but they don't have any compassion for one another. But of course, paradoxically, what the planet exactly needs at that moment is a race of zombie vampires. It probably doesn't need another community of Will Smith-like rugged individualists to come and screw everything up again. But as I said before, the kind of paradise that would be produced by that kind of thinking, the kind of ecopsychology, which would produce an individual human which looks like a zombie vampire and has no compassion, would not be a nice place to look at. It would definitely be read in tooth and claw. So I think there's always going to be a bit of a conflict there between a kind of ecological awareness. It's never going to be a bunny-hugging version of ecopsychology. There's always going to be a conflict there between the demands of the individual, if you like, and the pains and pleasures experienced by individual human beings, and the kind of anthropomorphized pains and pleasures of the planet. And there will be ethical choices. Sometimes we will have to choose, is it better to let this person suffer and die, or let this planet be damaged? On that cheerful thought,